as we have this interesting period between Christmas and New Year's Day, which I always find kind of spooky in a kind of funny way. I had a terrible Christmas. I was very sick. I had some kind of gastric problem, and I was like food poisoning or something. I'm over it now, but it ruined my Christmas, so that's okay. I was in a lot of pain and removing a lot of stuff from my body in both directions, and that's okay. I managed to get over it, and I avoided going to hospital. So I didn't really have much of a Christmas this year, except being in pain and being sick. But I'm still here, and I hope you're all keeping well and you're enjoying the Christmas period. Uh, so I've loads of fun eating Christmas food and drink, which will be taken care of in time. So that's the good. I'll have a late Christmas, a late Yule. But I've started reading Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, and gosh, is that a poignant novelette for these days. It's about a retired civil servant in search of a utopia in order to nullify his own bitterness and anger at the world, uh, as he longs to be an insect almost. But it's so typical of the type of these utopians we have today who have brought us to this mess. This is a lot of this comes from this utopian thing. I remember, like, even back 10 years ago, warning you guys about things like the Venus Project and all this. That's all led to the World Economic Forum and all this nonsense of, the Great Reset. That's all come from that. You're being primed for a very, very long time. This is why your man who's behind the Venus Project was courted by royalty and like the Dutch House of Orange and stuff. But all the truth is just so stupid. That's why, the ultimate, you know, control opposition, Russell Brand, is a big supporter of the Venus Project. And it's all the Great Reset under different names. But they were testing the waters and putting it out there. And this utopian thing. I was just thinking about that the other day. Is really the whole thing of like we can be zero, like the not needlecraft zero, ping pong zero. We can be zero. That we can eradicate a virus completely. Something that's never happened in the history of the earth. But you have these fanatics who go around thinking they're the modern version of like the Chinese Cultural Revolution or the Khmer Rouge, where they think they can eradicate a virus completely. Now, they're really sexing up this omicron thing at the moment. Here in Ireland, you read the Irish RT's national website, national TV website, you would think it was worse than the Black Death. Of course, the use of language is always remarkable in the stuff. Remember when you see something saying 90% of ICU beds are now filled. You have to remember that the biggest hospital in the world probably doesn't even have 20 ICU beds. I know the biggest hospital in Ireland, I think, has something like 12 ICU beds, and the biggest hospital in Britain has something like 15 or 16. So 90% of that is a dozen people. So when they never give you, they don't say they sex up and massage numbers. This is going right back to the Gulf War, the whole weapons of mass destruction, and they sexed up dossiers, they used to call it. And they made, by changing the contextual approach to something, it could make it more real than not. And that was a classic, the weapons, showing pictures of gas tanks and saying these are full of chemicals, and your mind fills in the rest. Well, the same thing with saying 90% of ICU wards are full, which is, there might be 8 or 9 people, 6 or 7 people. In many hospitals, 2 or 3 in some hospitals would be 90% of the ICU ward in that hospital. They don't actually tell you there's, in the whole country of Ireland right now, there are 15 people or 25 people or 28 people in ICU out of 5.5 million. They won't tell you that. They'll say 90% because 90% is the way to sex up the numbers. And this whole thing is like everyone's testing positive. Like some professor came out today and says, there's 16,000. See, the Irish nation of hypochondriacs now, as well as pussy men, and they go this. They're all constantly testing themselves. See, it's so funny. They told them that the antigen test was useless, And now it's the bedrock of NEFID and the government's COVID whole approach. It's now a holy sacrament. What was, screwball science last year is now a holy sacrament. So every loser in the country is going out and testing themselves, and they're all testing positive for the seasonal flu. The seasonal flu. And so the seasonal virus. Now, this is actually a good thing because and there's a professor saying infection rates are even higher. So everyone thinks they've got like a killer plague when all they've got is the regular seasonal virus and a weak one. Now, the Omicron thing is actually interesting because this is the death of the COVID virus as a pandemic. This is actually should be celebrated as amazing good news. Is that it's now at the stage where it's weak. Not only is the stage it's weak, that actually catching Omicron now will be extremely beneficial to your immune system. Because what you're doing now is you're actually building, this is the silver bullet, the natural herd immunity bullet. This is the Omicron variant. And this will actually cure you. And you're free from COVID now. But instead they're acting like it's the killer bullet. It's the death sentence. It's unbelievable. The propaganda, I've never seen anything like it. And the reason for this is these politicians have become gods. These bureaucrats, these civil servants, these mediocre politicians, these mediocre, this is the age of mediocrity. This is why Dostoevsky, the Russians, they really are tremendous, Kafka, who's Czech, I know, but they really are tremendous authors in that they show the pathology of mediocrity and in terms of bureaucrats and just like boring people and how pathological the mediocre can be. Now, there was an article in the Irish Times the other day saying the daftest conspiracy theories that people believe. First of all, many of them were not conspiracy theories. The first one was, first of all, this soy boy Cook, who, when you look at his other articles, some of them are almost like infatuations over the young Greta Thunberg, which is considering the Irish Times and Tom Humphreys and its history surrounding their journalists and underage girls. That seems to be an issue with the Irish Times journalist. I forgive me if I be a bit cynical about your motives there, in the same way you think that everyone who's into conspiracy theories is mentally ill and dangerous or a fascist. So let me apply that to you. Your obsession with Greta Thunberg, in the Irish Times, Tom Humphrey, underage girls, let's play the devil advocate and put that back towards you. You see how things can be twisted, even if they're not true. So you being a mediocre journalist, if you're watching this, you attacked my friend, my late friend, Enoch Crane. Why? Because he's gone. He's not here anymore and he can't sue you. And you also wrote something quite repulsive about Jim Core. You said he was a musician turned conspiracy theorist. No, I believe the last Core's tour was a big, huge arena sellout around the world. So he's not an ex-musician. The Coors are extremely successful to this day. But of course, you had your little snide soy boy, beard oil smirk, beard oil encrusted smirk, have a go at him. And it's typical of what you are. Journalists are just pure excrement, and you even know you are. But anyway, he starts off by saying, it's one of those classic things, like the first thing that comes out, the Illuminati don't exist, and claimed that the Illuminati were invented in an article in Playboy magazine in the 60s. When I have Louis Spence's book from 1890 inside, talking about Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati and its infiltration of the Grand Orient Lodge in Paris. And I've got numerous Freemasonic texts talking about the great tragedy, or in some cases how it was greatly inspired by the Bavarian Illuminati's coming into the lodges and taking over Freemasonry. And this guy then claims, this fact checker from the Irish Times then claims that the only source for the Illuminati existing is a 1966 article, a satire or something, in Playboy magazine. And this is a journalist with the Irish Times. This is how bad it is. This is the kind of garbage and idiots and pathological mediocre types that have now entered into these Kafka-esque, Dostoevsky-esque kind of like nobodies, real no-mere men and women who now are the fundamental backbone of journalism. in this country and around the world when they're not even capable of being basic journalists. So he said, and nobody said the earth is flat. Look, I think there's shit I get off people for saying the earth is flat. And the earth is a globe, the only people I know that think the earth is flat are the most stupid fucking morons, most stupid idiots who are easily led and controlled. And they're also the same ones behind Q. I still don't even know what QAnon is. I still don't know what it is. So he brings out all the old things, and then he brings out some expert on conspiracy theories and says that, like, people who believe in conspiracies and question governments, well, often it's code word for Jews. So half of my family is Jewish. Well, I married into one. Well, this is kind of a complicated thing, but there's a Jewish aspect to my family. I've numerous Jewish friends. What? Huh? What? Huh? What? And yeah, it's all the lefties who hate Israel. These kind of people who don't believe conspiracies exist. And how come they're never accused of being anti-Semitic, and yet they're the only ones that really are. I mean, the code word for hating, all these lefties all hate Israel, right? How come no one ever accuses them of being anti-Semitic? And yet, somehow they have the people who are suspicious of government motives. You have to bring this convoluted thing around. It's actually what they really believe in is they hate Jews. What? We didn't even brought the equation. And 9/11, well, that definitely wasn't a conspiracy. Look, I don't know what happened on 9/11 except it was very odd. And there's lots of things I still don't get about it. And I'm not an idiot. And I don't sit there watching smoking. I don't even smoke dope or anything. I don't watch 20-hour long videos about, like, 9/11. I just looking at it over all these years, and the hunch, this intuition tells me there's more to this story, just like weapons of mass destruction. You have to understand, if these same people would be telling us that the Gulf War was justifiable and the weapons of mass destruction really did exist, if a press release from a government told them it was okay to believe that. See, that's what I'm saying. They're not journalists, they're just regurgitating press releases and someone else's words. They're just all repeaters, repeating. And they're all so smug, and they're really not very intelligent, because as Dostoevsky and Kafka tells us, weaponized pathological mediocrity has no sense of irony of its own stupidity and its own failings. It's the smugness is what replaces the lack of intellectual prowess. It's been said lately that all the people who are jocks are now reading Dostoevsky and Kafka. All the idiots ones at schools who were not nerds are now all reading, Thomas Sowell. They're reading Nietzsche. They're reading Machiavelli. They're reading Montaigne. And what are all the geeks that went to school with, who were supposed to be the clever ones in school? Well, they know all the names of anime figures and collectible anime connectables, and that's what they are now. So the ones who are in school who are not considered very bright, who are like, go to shop, go to trade, or the jocks, they're all reading Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, Montaigne, Machiavelli. What are all the so-called clever boys at school? The nerds who got all the best grades? Well, if they're not working as journalists writing dumbass columns for the Irish Times, they're experts on, obscure anime characters. And that's where we are today. And these experts on obscure anime characters are the ones who work in places like Google, and you type into Google, are there only two genders? And Google says, no, there are many genders. And then you type in the same Google engine, does hydroxychloroquine work in fighting viral infection? No, even though it always has. And these people have now come into this power. They're now controlling narrative rather than actually. You see, it's that, the Revenge of the Nerds movie, when you watch it back now, and you see Lewis raping a guy's girlfriend, you really see it for what it is, what they are. It's like, and Christian Morris has talked about this as well, like the rugby boys at the school that he went to, the rugby lads, were all fine guys. They weren't all just like, ugh. A lot of them were wanted to learn, or had like intellectual longings. But the nerds and the cretins and the loser, the guy who picked his nose and ate his own snots at the back of the class and went, yes sir, no sir. That's who's running the world today. Survival of the incorrigible. Really what it is. Now, and we get insights into their true pathology. Like I was saying with that guy at the Irish Times, and there's infatuation over Greta Thunberg. And then you think about Tom Humphreys and his infatuation that went very much further with little girls at the Irish Times. And you start going, are we seeing a pattern here? The same with the producer at RTE and getting caught bringing that girl to the Leeds United, underage girl to the Leeds United game and thinking, we're getting an insight here, you know? And so that's how you always give it back to them. If they're trying to make out, he doesn't trust the government. Is he a bit of a racist, the far right? Far right. Oh, well, we give it back to you. The only thing is, we actually have fucking evidence. I don't know one person involved ever in the 10 years I've been in this scene who's ever attended a far right meeting, who has anything to do with groups like the National Front or, the British Nationalist Party, any of that stuff. Not one. But yet, we have the Irish establishment who are going far right. Conspiracy theorists, far right, racist. We have Tom Humphreys, that producer at RTE, and this infatuation with. Very uncomfortable I am. I'm very uncomfortable about Irish Times journalists being infatuated with, Greta Thunberg, considering the history of certain journalists inside that organisation. You know what I'm saying? Far right. You really are putrid, aren't you? You'll never beat us. You'll never fucking beat us. You won't. Because we have righteousness on our side. We have the ancient gods on our side. All you have is the latest smirking fucking piece of shit from some dog-ass profane government piece of wanker bureaucrat. You'll never win. You'll never win. You will fall like all of them. And you will be profane, and your soul won't be reincarnated, and you'll be ravaged by the flotsam of the abyss, the 10th gate. You will be gone. You haven't a chance in hell. And you won't win. You just won't win. You can fudge it all you like. You can change it all you like. You can do it all you like. You can slander, attack, smirk, besmirch, twist things out of context all you like. Doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true that 90% of ICU beds, it might be 10 people, not 10,000. You'll never. That 16,000 infections is not 16,000 deaths. You'll never win because you're always a liar. You'll always be found out. Because you're profane. You're against natural law on every level. And I'll be forced to agree that there's profane within the old scene as well. Things like the Freeman of the Land, that always fails because it's utterly profane. It attracts criminals and lowlives and scammers. And, I went to one of their meetings 11 years ago, and here all these people want to overthrow the government on social welfare benefits. That was enough. That was all I needed to know about them. The same thing with these civil servants who are all on 6-figure salaries, pension for life, 5 weeks paid holidays a year, and they're all in people before profit, and they want to smash and overthrow the state. As long as they keep all those perks, they're entitlements. You are profane. You will always be found out. Just like Luke O'Neill, Professor Luke O'Neill, he's profane. He was found out. Bullshitter. This is the guy who was inside a giant plastic bubble saying, it's great, we can be in these bubbles and see the flaming lips. That's how he'll be remembered. He won't be remembered as the hero who fought COVID. He'll be remembered as the fucking Egypt on RTE inside a bubble. That's how he'll be remembered. Hubris, my friend, hubris. The great undoing of the mediocre pathological types. Hubris. Goes to their head. It always comes back to bite them on the ass. Now, again, these people are extremely dangerous too. We have to remember. I mean, if we had to get anything from Dostoevsky and Kafka, is that the kind of insidious individuals and retired civil servants and other types, bureaucratic types, are the ones who ultimately led to the horrors of the gulags and the gas chambers of the Third Reich. Because in order for their profanity to be increased, they have to continue to lie even stronger and stronger until the lie becomes the default mechanism by which the consciousness of the general population is controlled. Now, I'll give you an example. In Ireland this week, there was a big scandal. They showed a bunch of bureaucrats having a party, no social distancing, no masks, all smiling for selfies. in the middle of a lockdown, and we're all told to be, this is outrageous, and we hear about robust apologies and lessons learned. Now this has happened in all our countries. Britain, the most common one, was the one with Professor Neil Ferguson going to see his woman. Now that the whole aspect of that is not his personal life. That doesn't matter. That people's personal life is his own business. It's when Professor Lockdown breaking lockdown. And then I started thinking about the other day. I put an article on Substack about it. A good piece of writing. See, because I'm not a journalist at the Irish Times, I know how to write, and I know how to do things properly, and to see things in a. You see, John Waters said the other day. I think he said something like, the opposite of the opposite of a conspiracy theorist is a bad journalist. That was one of those genius quotes I've ever heard. And we are in an age of bad journalism, like never before. But anyway, these fellas having these meetings in the Irish government, your first reaction is you want to kill them all. The smirking, Malahide Rugby Club face on these these lifelong bureaucrats who've never worked in ignoring the lockdown. They were putting ordinary people. But the reason that is, they're deliberately doing these things. The establishment are deliberately breaking lockdown rules, so you'll be outraged. Not because, and what that really is, the purpose of this is, it entrenches the notion and amplifies the notion that there's a pandemic going on. You understand? It's very clever propaganda. It's like Edward Bernays 2.0. It's very clever rules when you think about it. My God, they broke. Look at these fuckers having their Christmas party with no social distancing or no masks, while there's a pandemic. Hold on a second. Is there a pandemic going on, or was this created to have you outraged that there was, and subconsciously dig or amplify the notion of a pandemic into your head? You see, we're dealing with psychopaths, and these psychopaths have had decades now, since Edward Bernays, to get it right. Now they get it wrong now and again, and they're getting it wrong at the moment. Basically, the only people who believe there's a pandemic right now are people who work for the government or people of very low intelligence. And unfortunately, in Ireland, something like we have 300,000 civil servants, and people of low intelligence who end up working as journalists in the Irish Times and making their mammies proud, writing infatuating articles about Greta Thunberg. Oh, Greta. Oh, Greta this, Greta that. Woo. Ghost of Tom Humphreys. Woo. Tom Humphreys. Camogie teenage girls. Woo. How did I ever make that connection? Conspiracy theories, far right. It works both ways, my friends. It works both ways. Now, it's like RT and cocaine. They can't be separated. And yeah, so I bet they got some really high quality coke. I mean, if I was actually invited to I would never be invited to an RT studio to do a debate show. But if I was, the first thing I'd be like, where's the dealer? They must have some high end coke here, considering the salaries the RT presenters and staff are on. And I mean, who's the dealer? Who's the man on the inside? Who's the one that gave Jerry Ryan his final blast of Bolivian marching powder? I would like to meet them. I mean, when I think of RT now, I just think of a cocaine plate. I think of like everyone coked out of their heads. That's all I think. Writing eulogies to the latest staff member who died that go on for 25 years. But anyway, I digress. No, I didn't. And starting to turn to like Derek and Clive here, But yeah, so I'm all over the fucking place today. That's because I've survived death, so I'm like, woo! I'm like a little kid who gets talking again, gets his first words out. Yes, so like the ruses are everywhere. They're all over the place. These people have had all these decades since Edward Bernays, and these people who like write in the Irish Times wouldn't even know who Edward Bernays was. It's conspiracy theorist, that's what that's a. Edward Bernays didn't exist. It was conspiracy theory, or that's not true. Who? How? I got a degree in journalism. Who's Edward Bernays? That's literally what they're like today. That's literally what they're like. And then again, the nerds don't know who they are, but who knows who has read propaganda, who has read about the century of the self, the jocks, the people in school who were not considered very bright, who were only good for working in metalwork and getting a trade. They're the ones. That's the thing is today, the working class stiffs, the blue collar, man, is the one sitting down today. This is an amazing time we live in. the highly educated college PhD type, sitting at home collecting anime figures off Amazon, thinks there's 857 genders, and is dressed in a head to toe condom, afraid of a virus, and doesn't know anything. Where the guy that he looked down on in school, who and went off to become a plumber, a mechanic, a builder, working in a shop, is now sitting at home because of far-right conspiracy theories, is reading propaganda by Edward Bernays, is reading The Century of the Self, is reading Dostoevsky, is reading Kafka. Now, what is that? And these, you can go to a pub with these people, and you can say, "Have you ever, what do you think of Montaigne?" And he says, "Oh, I just got into that. Just a guy like this is you're talking. I'm having conversations these days, folks, with guys who worked on oil rigs in the North Sea about French philosophy in the 1600s. And if I meet someone with a PhD, they want to talk about a Netflix TV show or anime. Far right conspiracy theory. That's what we're living in today. And that's why we have survived nearly 23 months of the most insatiable propaganda war in the history of the world. Because we don't care about what mainstream values are, because we know it's excrement. We are the ones who are actually, it's like, I don't know who said it, but they say that you should learn from history, but the problem is that people don't learn from history. Now, what people learn from history is that they don't learn from history. I don't know who said that was. Again, I'm not feeling the best right now. It'll come to me. I'm sure someone down below will post that. But yeah, those damn Russians, they were well ahead of the curve. They say, I come from Dublin. It's supposed to be a famous place for writers. Well, it was, but you look at the Russian writers. It's true. I think it was Anton Bodan said, anyone who wasn't a great writer that wasn't Russian was Irish, or that wasn't Irish was Russian. There's definitely a lot of truth to that. I'm seeing that more and more now, and I think Irish people could develop a great affinity to the Russian writers, and to the Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. They can develop a tremendous connection there that we've lost in many ways, and it's fascinating to read. Now, a lot of these guys were Christian. I've no problem with that, but when they were just talking about morality. But the thing is that it's so interesting. It's so interesting to see how we flipped up. Like having a college degree today. I mean, Candace, what's that lady in America? Candace. She's a black lady, and she's really beautiful, and she's like a conservative commentator. I can't remember her second name, but she said something the other day that people are just being pumped out by colleges today with degrees, and they're stupid. Literally having a PhD today is or a master's degree means you're stupid. That's literally what it is. That's been brewing for a long time. When I worked in business, PricewaterhouseCoopers, as they were known back then, or Price Waterhouse, as they were, actually, that's how far gone when I was working in business. Price Waterhouse actually stopped hiring people. It's actually stopped their college degree only hiring policy, because more and more morons were coming out of the colleges and universities, and they were actively looking for people who didn't go to college or university. Now you just think, but that's 20 years ago now. So big business is not stupid. It has to make money and keep things flowing. And 20 years ago, they are starting to realize that only colleges are just turning out morons. They're just turning out morons. And I looked at something recently. All the most successful Irish people, most of them never went to college. In terms of business and stuff like that, nearly all of them are self-made, and you see that's the same on many other countries. Or they had a little bit of college like me, and they didn't like it and dropped out. I'm not saying I'm successful, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. But I wish it was successful, but fuck all the show for this crap. But it's my dharma, and I have to accept it. So that's the latest update. I hope you're all keeping well. I all had a lovely Christmas. I even though I had a shite one. Um, Remember that, like, when the next time you see an article by some smug journalist who's going on about conspiracy theorists and the far right, you're dealing with someone who's, you know, Dostoevsky and Kafka wrote about them years ago. They're or dealing with some civil servant who has, like, oh, I know about all this. You're dealing with with pathological mediocrity elevated to a level where it could only managed to gain that level in a deeply dysfunctional society. In a society where excellence was actually at the forefront, people like that would be at home, laughed at, and going nowhere. This is the world we live in. So always remember that. And like I said, always be very proud that you are who you are. I'm extremely proud of the people in this tribe. I'm extremely proud of people who are not in this tribe who are like us. We have avoided an unbelievable barrage of propaganda and mind control, and they failed. It's over. They're not winning. And you can sit there like I'm saying, oh well, they're going to get that. No, what great reset? They're not going to get it. The latest article in the World Economic Forum was so bizarre. It's only something that someone who's pathologically mediocre could actually come up with. Don't wash your clothes because it will save the environment. This is what they're like. This is why they've lost already. When I see Klaus Schwab, he looks like a baboon to me. He is a baboon. And all these people, they're just Elon Musk. These are nobodies. They're nobodies. And they're just blips in history. That's all they are. And all through history, the righteous have always survived the profane. Always. And we are living in a time where the profane are in the ascendancy, but they've also reached the pinnacle of their own pathological insanity as their necessity of survival by taking a virus with a 1% survival rate and having tried to convince the world that it will wipe them out because it's the most dangerous thing ever. And even when that didn't happen, they fudged and lied the numbers. Remember, when a government minister gets up on TV and tells journalists to repeat this exactly, in this country, there are 22 people in ICU with COVID. That's not profane. That's natural law. That's righteous. When they get on stage and say, oh, we're afraid to say that 90% of ICU beds are full, without telling the actual number, that's profane. And that's doomed. Sanguinosis. Look after yourselves. I'll make another video tomorrow.